Empty office buildings are creating a property tax problem for the city of Boston, potentially leaving homeowners holding the bill if action isn't taken.
Boston, once the shining beacon of America's economic might, is now grappling with a looming financial crisis that threatens its very foundation. Empty office buildings, slumping property values, and a massive projected budget shortfall are setting the stage for a potential disaster that could cost the city $1.7 billion in tax revenue over the next few years. The latest report from the Boston Policy Institute paints a bleak picture, highlighting the risks that empty office spaces and declining commercial property values pose to Boston's fiscal future. This tax revenue is crucial to funding a variety of essential services, from road repairs and public schools to emergency services and public parks. With commercial real estate making up over a third of Boston's tax base,
empty office spaces in Boston, brought on by the pandemic, could create financial problems for the city.
The stakes couldn't be higher. If Boston fails to stem this growing crisis, the city could see its finances unravel in ways not seen since the darkest days of its history. The numbers are stark and sobering. In just the past year, Boston's commercial real estate market has seen office property values dip by nearly 9%, a loss reminiscent of the economic downturns of the 2008 financial crisis and the 2000 dot-com bubble. This decline could continue, with property values potentially falling between 35% to 45% by 2029. With office buildings selling for 50% to 70% less than their market value over the past year. Boston's economic future is in jeopardy. The city faces a year-over-year budget deficit, which is expected to grow from $135 million this year to over $550 million in 2029. This budget shortfall will have far-reaching consequences, threatening the city's ability to maintain basic public services and invest in long-term growth. Evan Horowitz, the executive director of Tufts University's Center for State Policy Analysis, which co-published the report, warns that the city's financial situation has deteriorated far faster than anticipated. Things are not getting better, Horowitz states bluntly. Offices remain empty. Their valuations continue to fall. We think they'll fall further than we thought. This grim outlook presents a stark reality for the city.
To build a vibrant downtown that doesn't involve the central role of office buildings. It could be apartments. It could be lab space.
One in which Boston's traditional reliance on commercial property taxes to fund public services may no longer be viable. If the situation continues to worsen, the city's ability to provide vital services like education, emergency response, and infrastructure improvements could be compromised. While the outlook from economic analysts and the Boston Policy Institute is troubling, Mayor Michelle Wu remains steadfast in her rejection of the report's predictions. Our budget is balanced, she stated in a recent press conference, downplaying the anticipated tax revenue losses. Wu's stance, however, has been met with skepticism. Despite her optimism, some office buildings have already sold at staggering discounts, with prices plummeting by 50% to 70% in the past year alone. Wu argues that the 2024 commercial property valuations don't reflect the drastic changes forecasted by the Institute. She also notes that the city is working to mitigate the crisis by converting vacant office spaces into housing and repurposing empty storefronts for new small businesses.
A growing number of companies are not renewing their leases. That's leaving empty office space, and surrounding businesses that rely on those nearby workers are starting to feel the impact.
But the question remains, will these measures be enough to address the mounting financial problems? What makes Boston's situation even more precarious is the city's unique dependence on commercial property taxes. More than a third of Boston's budget comes from taxes on commercial properties, a figure that is much higher than in most other cities, where commercial property taxes typically account for only around 11% of the budget. This heavy reliance on commercial property taxes makes Boston particularly vulnerable to shifts in the real estate market. What's worse, Massachusetts law restricts Boston from using other forms of tax revenue, such as local sales or income taxes, further exacerbating the financial pressures. Without these alternative revenue streams, the city has fewer options for managing its growing deficit. As the crisis deepens, some have suggested that Boston could attempt to shore up its finances by increasing property taxes or reducing its revenue expectations. However, these measures are easier said than done. Attempts to implement such changes have already proven politically tricky. Last year, Wu pushed a plan to shift more of the tax burden to commercial property owners in an effort to spare homeowners from increased taxes. The plan was met with fierce opposition, and it ultimately failed in the state legislature. Wu has renewed her efforts this year, but her tax reform proposals remain stalled in the State House, with little sign of progress.
The goal is to keep storefronts filled up and Boston neighborhoods bustling with activity. And while everyone agrees with that, there are those that still have concerns.
Despite the financial crisis, Boston's business community has been eerily quiet. The once powerful business leaders who helped steer the city through difficult times are now struggling to find their voice in a rapidly changing political landscape. Historically, Boston's business elite, a group known as the Vault, was instrumental in securing the city's financial future. This group, which included banking executives, industrialists, and real estate moguls, played a critical role in saving the city from bankruptcy during the 1950s and 1960s, helping fund major development projects like the Prudential Center and Government Center. In those days, Boston's business leaders worked behind the scenes to drive economic revival, and their influence was a defining feature of the city's financial recovery. But today, the Vault's influence is a distant memory, and the power structure of Boston's business community has dramatically shifted. Corporate mergers, out-of-town takeovers, and retirements have weakened the once centralized business network. As a result, Boston's business leaders have become less coordinated and less effective in pushing for policy changes.
But in Boston, it's not just rent and mortgage payments. Next year, because of state law, corporations are set to pay their lowest share of property taxes in the last 43 years.
Even when the business community attempted to push back against Wu's tax proposals, it lacked the power and cohesion to influence the outcome. Instead of wielding influence, the business community has found itself on the defensive, unable to rally around a unified agenda or strategy. This shift in power is not unique to Boston. Across the United States, corporate influence has declined in recent years, as trust in business leaders has eroded. In Boston, this weakening of business power has been most evident in recent political struggles, such as the MCAS graduation requirement debate. When the state legislature voted to repeal the MCAS requirement, the business community, which traditionally would have fought to preserve such measures, was largely absent from the debate. In fact, the business community's opposition to the repeal was weak, with less than a third of the funds raised for the campaign coming from business interests. This failure to mount a robust defense reflects the broader decline in the business community's political muscle. As the crisis deepens, the question of whether Boston's business leaders can regain their influence remains unanswered.
Yeah, JC, Glenn, the city certainly feels like they had a successful year, touting several different statistics, but there are those who feel like these granular issues are slipping through the cracks.
Will they find a way to unite and push back against the rising tide of economic challenges, or will they continue to falter in the face of adversity? With the city facing a potential $550 million budget shortfall by 2029, the future of Boston's economy hangs in the balance. The city can no longer rely on its once vibrant commercial real estate sector to prop up its finances. To survive, Boston must adapt to the changing economic landscape. At the heart of this challenge is the need for a new model of leadership. The old ways of doing business, of relying on powerful elites to steer the city's economic future, are no longer viable. Instead, Boston needs a more inclusive and collaborative approach that brings together business leaders, community groups, and local residents to tackle the city's challenges head-on. Groups like the Charles River Regional Chamber have already begun to show the way forward, advocating for affordable housing and breaking down barriers to development through coalition building and community outreach. This approach could serve as a model for the future, one that emphasizes working together for the common good rather than focusing on individual interests. As Mayor Wu prepares for re-election, the stakes for Boston's future are higher than ever.
If we do nothing and the commercial values drop, residential property taxes will go up very significantly. I cannot have that happen, and I know our residents and our businesses can't afford for that to happen either.
Can the city's business community find its voice again? Or will the decline of corporate power leave the city's finances in a state of disarray? The outcome of the coming mayoral election could determine whether Boston remains a hub of economic vitality or sinks into a prolonged period of financial stagnation. Boston's fate is not yet sealed, but the city is at a crossroads. To secure its future, business leaders must take responsibility for the economic challenges ahead and collaborate with other sectors to chart a new path forward. Without a coordinated effort, Boston could slip into a doom loop where falling tax revenues and service cuts lead to even more economic decay. The business community has a critical role to play, and its ability to act swiftly and decisively could make all the difference. Boston's fate rests on the ability of its business leaders, residents, and government.
The more that downtown is a residential, thriving, busy neighborhood, just like every other one of our neighborhoods, the more everyone benefits.
To come together and find new ways to move forward. With commercial real estate in freefall and public services on the line, the next few years will be critical. The city must adapt to the evolving economic landscape, or risk slipping into the kind of doom loop where falling revenues, higher taxes, and service cuts make everything worse. The time for action is now. If Boston's business community can find its voice again, collaborate with its neighbors, and work together with City Hall, it can emerge from this crisis stronger than ever. But if it fails to step up, the city could find itself in a downward spiral with no way out. The future of Boston is at a crossroads, and only time will tell which path the city will choose.